Here is Yellow Days.
Hello, you're listening to WKDU 91.7 FM, Philadelphia, Drexel's non-commercial, non-format radio station. Sitting here right now, I'm in the station with Yellow Days, George. Could you actually remind me real quick how to say your last name?
Yeah, my phone. George van den Broek.
Yeah.
It's Dutch. So I got a Dutch dad, but I'm actually from England. So yeah, and I'm here on tour in Philadelphia, just coming through to play some shows. But yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to have you. I've actually listened to a lot of your music over the past few years. So this is actually a really cool opportunity to get to talk to you just about all of that. And I'll start with normal interviewer question, radio interview. Could you share the story behind your latest album / EP?
Yeah, for sure. So we've got a new album called Hotel Heaven, and it's really way more rocky than my past work. Where people who know Yellow Days, it's typically kind of floaty R&B soul, kind of funky music. And this record is a little more kind of rocky funky, I suppose, and and it's kind of a bit more like John Lennon inspired, and a bit more kind of the Kinks, and a lot more kind of English bands really than kind of a lot of the stuff that influenced my early work, which would be really predominantly kind of American R&B soul, like Isley Brothers and things like that, and what have you. But no, so yeah, it's a new record, it's a concept album, so it's got all this kind of kind of deep kind of like concept that kind of as much as you're interested in, you can get involved in. But it's one of those things where for an artist, you write a concept record, it's mainly for you, not for the audience. But it's it's kind of, I'm in a hotel, and I can go on and on and on about that concept. But I guess you watch the videos, check it out, see if you can understand it, because that's the idea, is that people figure it out. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's just music. So if you just want to listen to it like that, then feel free.
Yeah, actually, mentioning the videos, and also that is really cool. I noticed the change in tone, a cool variation, cool to see the range of things and the range of influences that go into all of that, while still kind of maintaining the same kind of essence of previous work and just you as an artist. But since you mentioned the videos, I wanted to jump down to a question that I was actually going to ask a little bit further in. But where do you pull your visual style from? Like, what are some influences there? You have some pretty iconic like album art, your video work and things like that.
Well, it's interesting. Kind of just surrealism, really, like, and not. Nothing that's like too wild or left field. Like probably the most left field thing is the film Holy Mountain, the like art film from the 70s that John Lennon produced. It's like an amazing surrealist kind of film, and it's like total art housey kind of madness. And that was a big influence because I watched that, and as I kind of in my early 20s now, and I kind of been watching things and having unoriginal thoughts and being like, wow, art films are amazing, things like that people do in their early 20s. But yeah, no, and like The Shining and like Twin Peaks and things like that, like the end of Twin Peaks, I thought was just kind of big inspiration. The red curtains and like the kind of dire surrealism, just like that was kind of a big influence for it. But it's based in a sinister hotel. So I mean, there's a lot of kind of classic pop culture that you can reference with that.
Yeah, that is cool. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the surrealism things, and that's another thing that's really cool about the visual style of a lot of those things. And similarly, you were talking a little bit about some of the influences, like films, art films, The Shining, things like that. How do non-musical influences like films, books, any other mediums influence your music writing?
It's interesting, like I suppose till now my music's been very biographical. You know, it's been like kind of more like a diary of like kind of feelings and thoughts. And whereas this was kind of the first record I've done where it kind of metamorphosized a bit and kind of started, you know, like even the lyrics I'm sort of talking about living in this hotel, and I reference like characters like Mrs. Moonlight or the concierge and things like that. So it's kind of like the first time I've kind of like, you know, built out, I guess, like characters and like a plot line and things like that within a piece of music, like within an album, which was really interesting. You know, it's like I've never done anything like that before, so that was really cool. But like I said, yeah, normally it would just be basic things like kind of ups and downs of relationships and things like that, which I suppose it is essence. It is, you know, like, you know, conflict and tranquility and, you know, all the things that people write music about. But then, you know, it's got this thick layer of kind of theatrics and kind of quite grand kind of plot lines and ideas, which I think, like I said, I don't know if anyone really catches on to any of that rubbish, but, you know, it's there, so.
Yeah. And talking about kind of the emotional kind of range of the most recent album, you've spoken about in the past like a balance of kind of like darkness with optimism and hopefulness on like past records. How would you say that kind of compares or contrasts with this most recent release and what you've been doing recently?
I mean, in a way, I think, you know, whenever I write something, it always tends to have the same kind of structure to it in terms of like, it's normally just like rock bottom exploration. That's normally what it always ends up being. Like it's kind of exploring like this kind of slow downfall into like the bottom, and then it's always got this little bit of hope at the end. And this record's very similar like that. And I think it's like, I think I love to kind of, you know, grovel and like, you know, get really, you know, like sort of kind of grotesque with the kind of the sadness and get really like, you know, like yeah, get my hands in the mud and like, you know, be like, oh, I feel awful, this is terrible, everything's awful, Jimmy. And I think, because I think that that's for me always just been like the funnest part of making music as well, like sort of kind of bullying myself or kind of just going through like the sort of like self-loathing thing on a song and stuff like that. But then, like, yeah, like I said, I think I always end up just writing the hopeful ending, because I'm like sort of just kind of an optimistic person, which is, you know, a bit annoying, but it's definitely like undeniable. Do you know what I mean? I always do it, and on this record, it's exactly the same. Do you know what I mean? It's like sort of goes, you know, all through all the different reasons why everything is awful, and then. And at the end, you kind of have this song called Planet Earth, which is like, you know, declaring like I don't want to die, and I want to be alive, and I do actually think like everything's worthwhile and things like that. So I think, yeah, it's like, you know, I always kind of ended up hitting those themes because I think it was just sort of kind of baked into who I am, what I want out of music, and you know what I mean. I think I kind of always want to, you know, be real in terms of talk about how terrible things are, but then I'm, you know. Actually, yeah, like I said, quite an optimistic person at the end of all of that, you know, despite being depressive or whatever else you could say I am. But so it always comes out in the end, this big like spectacular like hopeful thing. Which one record I've done which didn't have that was Is Everything Okay in Your World, where it just ended on a like really sad note, which was I always felt was maybe just a bit macabre. It's just, yeah, just sort of left people feeling totally empty and sad. You know? I don't know. I mean, it was a very sad time for me, but yeah, like I say, Harmless Melodies or other records I've done, it always tends to end on a pretty hopeful note.
Yeah. And that's cool. You're talking about kind of how the album as one like collective art piece like influences the people listening to it. I think that's a really cool way to look at it. You're looking at the real like full arc of what it is that you're creating there. And
yeah, absolutely. It's like, it's a funny thing because it's like inspiration when you're making a record is kind of thick, like psychological kind of like sort of jelly that you're like swimming around in, and then once you finish a record, it's packaged, it's out, and it's for everyone. It's like kind of move to like a totally new headspace, and when you listen back to it, you kind of realize like kind of what you were doing and what you were saying, because it's kind of an intense kind of period of time, especially if you write music all for yourself, and you know what I mean, like not like a band but like a solo artist or whatever. And then it's just sort of, yeah, and then you sort of see these trends in what you've done, and realize, like what you were trying to do, like which I think is, like you know that when you're doing it, but I think if you're really in like a flow state of creativity, you're not really, not it's not calculated. You know what I mean? I think maybe when you're in a band, you talk about things more kind of literally. You know what I mean? But when it's a solo project, you're kind of you're just sort of discovering your own intention as you do it, I suppose, because you can't. I mean, you can talk to yourself if you want. It's a little bit, it's a bit strange, but and I've done it before, but it's just you can't really discuss these things like with yourself without looking completely crazy. Which I guess is fine, but
yeah, and talking about that, the kind of dynamic between band and solo artist. I know you've also talked in the past about usually how I mean back around like 2020, you're talking about like you would track all your music first and then you would just take it to other musicians to record the parts, right?
Sure.
Is that still the same or similar to the workflow now?
So yeah, that was for a record I did called Day and Yellow Beat, which was 2020, just before pandemic, and it was it was essentially a time where I just did my first two records, and then all these great musicians and producers, mainly based out in LA, had like sort of heard about me and stuff. And I was getting put in like really great rooms with really great people, so I decided to do a record that really lent on all these great new players that I met. A lot of them played for like people like Frank Ocean and people like just all these kind of top tier players, like bassists, drummers, keys players, and one of them was John Cal Kirby, who now has got a great solo project on Stone's Throw, and did Eddie Chacon's like sort of production, both on Stone's Throw, but yeah, and it just met loads of great people, so I decided to work on it that way. But most of the time, I tend to do it all myself. Like I'm a multi-instrumentalist and play, bass, guitar, keys, and everything else. And I like to produce it myself these days as well. So Hotel Heaven, was just completely me from start to finish. I kind of did absolutely every little bit of music you hear on there, and no producer. I just had someone mix it at the end. So yeah, it's kind of I like to do the whole thing myself. It's good to switch it up because you learn so much. Like playing with those players and watching them play on my music, and some of them are great jazz fusion players, and some of them come from different kind of musical backgrounds. But to just kind of I've got like a kind of a sponge brain. Like if I watch someone do something in a room with them musically, this is not in other regards, but I can just sort of pick it up, like playing with great bassists, and I found that like I started emulating them massively when I got home, and would just sort of sit at the bass until practice my chops until I kind of could play like them. And I do the same with all of them, and I think it was just like a huge influence. So it's like after doing that and coming home and like kind of relearning what they were doing on these various tracks, kind of that made me really curious to kind of play it all again myself. So I like to kind of be influenced by players and definitely collaborate like that. But at the same time, I love the ego thrill of just doing it all yourself. Do you know what I mean? I think it's great because and the kind of meticulous kind of attention to detail, and you can kind of just be this kind of this musical dictator alone on an island. You know what I mean? With all your toys, it's like that's really fun. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I like to do a bit of both, really. But yeah, I really was admired like Matt DeMarco and Tame Impala and all the people who do it all themselves, basically, because I think it's like it's kind of like a John Lennon thing or something. It's really interesting type of music. It always feels super personal, and you can kind of like you can do a lot of pioneering. You can really try out mashing genres. Again, in a way where you don't have to like talk about it. You can just sort of do it without, verbalizing what the intention is. So that's really fun. But I think it actually becomes less and less unusual as time goes on, with like Logic and Ableton and things like that. I think it's kind of the natural thing to do is to just play music entirely by yourself. In a way, like if anything, the more challenging thing now for new artists would be to put a band together and get them all in the studio because it's expensive, and it's much easier to just learn all the instruments and play it yourself. I saw a Jim Morrison interview from The Doors, and he's on like Saturday Night Live or something, like sat on the sofa, and he's got his big beard and long hair and like sunglasses on, and like they're all just talking about something else, and then he just suddenly butts in and he goes, in the future, there will be one man making all the music on his own by a computer, and everyone just looks at him and thinks he's completely mad. Do you know what I mean? They're like, what is this guy talking about? And it's like completely off topic. It makes absolutely no sense, and he just says it as if he's like a seance. He's just heard it through the grapevine, or like from God or something. And it's just completely mad. But I think it's completely right. I mean, that's what most music that you hear now is. It's just one person sat at a computer playing everything, and I do that as well. But I try and make it sound, as real as possible. Which I suppose it is. It's just, it's just an odd way of making it. And like, yeah, it's kind of, you get this like reverse engineering thing where it's like kind of art imitating life or life imitating art. It's like strange because I'm like trying to make it sound like I'm a band, but I'm actually just one guy. And it's don't know, it's just funny, like ever spinning wheel, and I don't know. God, I wish I had a better reference for that. But yeah, it's kind of odd. But it's really fun. Like, there's no doubt about that. I think anyone who does it or knows somebody who does it can see it's like, it's really fulfilling to just sit and write a song in its entirety completely on your own. It's really fun.
Yeah, and talking about that a little bit, you've talked about specifically working by yourself. A big part of that is getting into a flow state of being able to make your music, and I feel like that lends well to working alone. At least a lot of the time. Is there anything that you do or that you think helps with getting into your flow state musically? Any experiences you tap into, any media, anything?
It's an interesting question. I mean, I'm British. I like to drink a lot. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. And we sort of, I don't know. It's, you just kind of, how do we tap into it? I suppose. Yeah, just kind of, I think inspiration is like a kind of a fleeting, confusing thing to put your finger on and try and explain or whatever. It's like, I think sometimes it's like as obvious as like chord progression, and other times it's like something ambiguous, like a feeling. But I don't know. So, it's one of those things you just sort of stumble across yourself kind of thing, and you figure out something. I mean, it's hard to say how that happens, really. I mean, yeah, like I said, sometimes it's like you're just like kind of pregnant with emotion, and then you'll go and do something and it does it that way. And then other times you're just sort of curious about a type of music or something. And, so it's kind of, I think overall it's always some sort of curiosity, isn't it, about yourself or about a sound or something. I think that's how you end up kind of producing something that matters or is good. Do you know what I mean? I think if you have like a lazy mind, then it's not going to amount to much. Do you know what I mean? I think there's that kind of having that kind of attention, that kind of curiosity. I think that kind of, like I said, attention, like being able to not let your mind wander and being able to focus on something. I think that's how you tend to produce something that matters and is interesting to listen to.
Yeah. And this is a quick short question, I guess. But do you ever take notes when you're out? Like if you have an idea pop into your head or anything like that, do you like record something somewhere? Yeah,
totally. Yeah, like I do like voice notes, and they tend to be completely anodyne and useless afterwards. Like it'll be stuff like I'll be walking around and I think I've just thought of the most genius bass line or whatever. The problem with that, is like, to use a musical term, is like, your mouth is monophonic, so you can only play one note at a time. So in your head, you'll hear like a piece of music, and obviously you're hearing the harmony, all the chords and everything, and then but when you listen back to the voice memo like a day later, it's just boom, 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 boom. It's like, I can't even remember like what the harmony was, what the point of this is. No, but I write stuff down, like I write down lyrics and things like that. But not as often as maybe you'd expect or think, but I think it depends what kind of music you're working on. Like I have a different band, a new one called the Stingrays that I play with my bassist and drummer from Yellow Days. We started this in the last year, and it's kind of really quite surrealist, like 60s British rock, and it's very happy-go-lucky and a little bit insane, and it's very like Paul McCartney, and like I know there's a guy from the Bonzo Dog Doodah band called Vivian Stanchel. I don't know if people know that. It's quite a off the wall reference, but he's kind of really sort of sarcastic and odd and like very British, like Monty Python kind of like is superbly absurd. Do you know what I mean? All that kind of stuff. And I think that like if I'm out like drinking or something, I'll be like this sort of moment where you look in the mirror and pull faces. I'll sort of come up with something like just like some like a mutant or frog dancing with the hog. Do you know what I mean? Things like that. That's probably the kind of thing that I'd write down. Just silly, weird nonsense. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
But
that's
then
cool.
nonsense
That's
that
cool.
will sound good on the '60s rock and roll song. Do you know? So.
Yeah.
But it's hard to sort of be wandering around and then just suddenly write some sort of somber love song lyric in my head. I think that would be a bit. So it's not really the kind of guy I am. Really, I mean, most of the time I'm just thinking about smoking a cigarette or taking a poo.
Yeah. You ever see like what's it called? Michael Jackson's like tapes. Michael Jackson would just have tapes out and like do these crazy like all the tracks basically recorded at once just by himself when he'd be out. It's crazy stuff to look at. I could never imagine just doing that as a musician.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah, because it would just like it would be like all the instrument tracks just recorded on like a tape recorder and just keep around, and it's pretty crazy stuff to look at. Yeah, but that's cool. Yeah, I feel that you can't be busting out singing chords in the middle of the. you can't.
Quite unlikable.
You got to work on your overtone singing. That's what it is.
Probably just won't have any friends.
You just got to get a polyphonic voice. Just get a second voice box. That's all you need.
That's the key.
But another. I would have so many questions about this thing, Rays, if time. But I'll move on to the solo stuff for now. Here's one that's what's something you'd wish you'd understood closer to the beginning of your music career?
Wow, that's interesting. I think I think for any artist that gets into music, I think it's like, especially when you get signed and start touring, I think the business side of things, it does get in the way, like certain relationships end and things like that, and managers and things like that, and that is complicated. And I started music really young, like I was like 16. 17 when I first started touring and got signed and had my first record do well, and these things get really complicated. You know what I mean? And I think to be honest, for someone in their 20s or 30s, I think it's not as complicated as it was for me, because it's when you're a kid in music, I think like managers and things like this start to feel like funny uncles that like you're like, they love me, I love them, that we're all a big happy family that make money and make everyone happy, and then it all goes in a burning skip and everything's ruined, and then you feel like untrustworthy and things like that. But no, I think just how complicated the business can be, really, like because it's a funny thing, the music business, but like ultimately, like I'm not one of those artists who kind of wants to sit and complain about that, because it's like compared to most businesses, it's really quite simple, and it's something to consider, I think, and it's something that I guess if I was talking to a younger artist, like you said, kind of the inside out version of your question, I'd say just be ready for everything to go completely wrong, because and to kind of expect that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's kind of a normal part of running it, because like when a musician, like, not to sound really capitalist and corporate, but like a musician, like they become the CEO of their own business, and it's like no one tells you that until you realize it, and you're like, oh Jesus, I'm running this whole company now, and it's and then if you're running your own business, things are going to go very wrong at some point. Do you know what I mean? That's like just normal human life. Do you know what I mean? That's like adult life. So that's probably what I'd say. Because it's a funny thing. Do you know what I mean? I think because especially when you're young, you're just like, hey, well, I sing songs, everyone likes my singing, and it's all good. You know, it's actually kind of more to it than that. Do you know what I mean? It actually gets quite more complicated. You know? But like I said, I think it's just something that you need to get to grips with and understand and get into. But yeah, and also just focus on the good things, do you mean? Because there's so much to be like grateful for and be happy about,
Yeah. And this one, feel free to pass if you want to. We'll get a little bit more optimistic after this, but what do you think has been the most difficult point in your career so far?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I did a major deal when I was about 18, 19. With Sony, RCA in America and Columbia in the UK, and yeah, it was kind of, I'd done my first 2 records and they'd done really well, and we traveled the world and stuff. I was kind of pitted this record to be like kind of my biggest one yet. It's A Day in the Yellow Beat, the record I did, and it was like, it was a big, expensive album to make. Like, it costed like, hundreds of thousands of pounds to make. It's a big, major deal record. I was in some of the best studios and traveled the world making it, and then ended up making the track, the album 32 tracks long, which was an interesting decision. One that I probably wouldn't make again, but and I think it got into this kind of funny thing with the label. Where it's like they'd be like, hey, well, George, you should probably just make it about 7 tracks. So I'd be like, well, I'm gonna make it 32, and I think I just kind of I had this kind of first 2 records had done really well, and it was like I'd done them like kind of on tiny EP labels, and nobody had ever kind of like A&R'd me or guided me on what the music should be or what it should sound like. So I kind of took it as like a personal offense when every time I was kind of given criticism and things like that, which guided me to make quite an odd album. And I think it was kind of like really like that was that making that record was so much fun, and but then putting it out, I put it out just as the pandemic hit. And I've been on this kind of upwards thing, for many years, like touring and popularity going up, and it's just suddenly the pandemic hit, and the relationship with the label had got so poor that they decided to drop me because we just didn't get along at all, and everything was just quite there's quite a lot of animosity and not much pragmatism going on there. And the record went out with like no promotion, and it was the most expensive record I've ever made, but not a penny was spent on making sure people hear it. And then we went straight into 4 years of the pandemic or whatever it was, or 2 to 4 years or whatever. And that was definitely like a kind of psychologically I was just sort of, it felt like the world was ending, obviously, like everybody knows that, But then also like my sort of career had kind of like really spiraled or hit the curb or something. I popped a tire, do you know what I mean? And it was time to sort of sort myself out. So yeah, and then that was probably the lowest moment, I think. And I just remember thinking, lots of relationships, business relationships had ended. A lot of people I really regarded very highly. We just started to fall from the fray, and and that still to now, I kind of see myself as like kind of turning the corner from that period. And yeah, that was probably a pretty rough moment, but that's when you kind of need to kind of invest in your music again, and in your real life relationships. Like I'm engaged as of recently, and I'm getting married this year, and me and my girl have been together since we were 15, 16. And like real things like that, like family and the people you love and things like that. This is what's important in life, and you kind of you just pick yourself back up and dust yourself off and write some new music and carry on, do you know what I mean? And then coming back out and realizing that the kids haven't gone anywhere, and that they love the tunes and things like that,
Yeah.
But there were definitely low moments. Like if anyone wants to ever work in music or do music, it's bound to happen. And I think that's part of a colourful career, like a fruitful career, is having ups and downs. You know what I mean? Because I think you learn the most from when it goes wrong. You don't even really learn anything when it's gone right. Do you know what I mean? You just sort of you're just like having a good time, and like sort of like a good time that you're just chilling and like this great like wave of happiness, and then suddenly something bad happens and you realize that like life's more complicated. So yeah, but like I said, yeah, again, I think it's just a normal thing for humans to do and go through, and I definitely like it's one of those periods of my life that shaped me now. And now I've decided to cut my hair into squares, and you know what I mean? I think I'm handling it okay.
It's going. I mean, I like how your answer to this question also is kind of taking the similar arc of like you're talking about like the hard time, and then you come back and kind of come back around to like what's a good.
I literally did that.
Yeah. And I respect that. I like that.
Annoyingly optimistic. So
Yeah, messed up. You can't be.
Yeah, it's like
what are you so happy for? That's crazy.
It's a bit saccharine.
Yeah, I mean, talking about that, the 2020 is when I think really got into a lot of your stuff. So I mean, I was one of the people who was around in that period of time that was like, got really interested around then.
Yeah, that's the thing and I think when you're like in the middle of these things, it feels like the biggest thing in the world. Like, and it's important to realize that nobody else cares that any of that stuff's happening. Do you know what I mean? It's like an age thing. Do you know what I mean? I think people, when people are a bit older in music, they know that. Whereas I think when you're a kid, you kind of get consumed by these things. But yeah, that's that.
And I mean, like you said, you've already kind of pulled it back a little bit more optimistic. But my next question is going to be, what's something you're excited about on the horizon? Things coming up. I mean, you're engaged. That's a big thing.
That's
Congratulations on that.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, definitely getting married. That's a pretty big deal, to put it lightly.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm excited about. I don't know, just getting older and just. I think I've started to realize now I'm actually like kind of entering a part of my career where I'm just sort of. I've been nearly doing this for nearly 10 years now, and it's like I kind of realized I'm just kind of in my like kind of floaty period where I've kind of put my feet on the ground and kind of people know who I am, and I can just kind of just mess around and have fun. Do you know what I mean? And kind of go on like some more kind of experimental kind of footing. I want to kind of try different things, but I think one thing that kind of irks me, that I think about, keeps me up at night, is singing as more than I do. And I kind of stripping back the music so that I can like really sing. So clearly I haven't quite made my mind up yet by what I'm saying, but I'm saying experimental, but I'm saying strip it back. But no, I think just figure it out. I'm starting to see records as installations of like different periods, and almost like not to sound pretentious, but like a painter or something. You can just kind of go through different phases and try different stuff, which is like kind of liberating, and kind of I think I've kind of like I said, when I started so young, and I kind of when I signed the major deals, a lot of people in my ear kind of really kind of pulling the ambition out of me, like, because in a positive way, like kind of showing me how ambitious I actually was as a personality, like where I wanted to reach as my music, how and as many people as possible, the better. But I think I've kind of reached a point now as an artist where I kind of I've kind of returned to innocence, where I kind of don't really mind. I kind of realize like that, like I can always start again. I can always do my thing. I've got my music, it's in me. Like I can always write. I know that I can always just start again, which is a good feeling. Do you know what I mean? That's quite that's really quite because the big fear for an artist is that they become tepid or scared of like losing their footing, and then they lose their edge because they're just kind of playing it safe, and they just slowly fade into ambiguity. I think I've kind of realized that I've kind of I can basically just do it. I can do whatever I want. And if I give it enough oomph, it'll work. Do you know what I mean? So that's a really nice thing to realize in your career. Like, I think this is the right time for me to realize that, so I can kind of go back to kind of not caring in a way, which I think is really what people who are musicians should be doing anyway. I don't think a musician should really be worrying like some modern musicians do. And I think it's kind of indicative of like TikTok culture and the music industry as it stands right now, is that artists tend to just kind of get pushed into this frenzy of like considering themselves too much and trying to kind of just trying to be the biggest thing in the world rather than just working on their craft, and which is people trying to go viral for no reason, and do you know what I mean, things like that. And I think that's really counterintuitive to good art and to honest music and things like that. So yeah, and what I'm excited about just making new records, and I think I'm trying to kind of coin a sound slowly over time, and yeah, chisel away at that. But then, like I said, yeah, maybe have a family, maybe have some kids or something like that. I'm a bit of a family man, despite my appearance. Like I look like a untrustworthy boyfriend, but I'm actually quite a family man. Like I said, been with my partner for like 10 years, and you know, I really live quite like a cozy small life when I'm not doing music. So yeah, I'd like to, you know, have some kids and, you know, teach them how to play music and things like that. And then make some freaky records, and hopefully with some good singing.
the dreams, yeah.
And I think the singing bit is the one that irks me. I'm like, because I know I'm a good singer, but I struggle to find the right tune to really let it rip. Do you know what I mean? So that's something that, you know, that's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, oh, that's super cool. That's you're describing the dream right there. You got it, like, you got the family figured out, stable, you know, that type of stuff, and then just make freaky records and keep things exciting and everything like that.
Got it all set up to go wrong.
Yeah, and I don't want to hold you up if you have to like rush anywhere after this or anything. Maybe I could speed around some questions.
Sure.
But a first one of kind of some of the ones that I have here towards the end is there a question that you wish interviewers asked you or your favorite artists more?
Ooh.
Like if you listen to interviews of artists that you really like, stuff that you'd want to hear from them, or for yourself that you'd like to be able to talk about more.
God, I don't know. That's a really good question. No, I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. What would I ask? No, I don't think so. You know, I think I wouldn't want to be an interviewer. I imagine it's very hard to ask, you know, people these questions and to kind of, you know, like, especially when you're dealing with musicians who are like kind of have got dulcet tones to their voices and put the whole audience to sleep. And no matter how cool or interesting they are, I think they tend to be pretty, like, you know, when you get a group of musicians together and have them talking, like, Jesus, that's really, it gets the heart rate in the room is so low. The most chillers, big bunch of chillers, and it's just like, I've got this new band I got. We were just, you know, we're all just such kind of low heart rate. Yeah, the stingrays. It was just sometimes we're sat together, we're like, hey man, like, yeah man, hey. I realized, well, should we drink some coffee or something? Like, I feel like we're all gonna die in a minute if we carry on talking like this. Like we're just gonna like float away. But no, so yeah, I think everyone who interviews musicians does a pretty good job if you manage to keep them upbeat and so, yeah, just, you know, their heart rate doesn't get too low.
Nah, you got to get it really technical, real fast. You got to be what's your favorite mode? What's your favorite cadence?
Well, that's the problem. If you get musicians to ask each other questions, they just ask kind of jargon.
It's like the fattest chord you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, word. I mean, yeah, that's cool. It's just something I thought about myself, kind of looking at just interviews that I've seen of artists and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and sometimes
I'll ask you that. What do you think most people like sort of miss or whatever?
I mean, I'm trying my best to try to find those myself, writing these.
But
I think I part of that question was informed by just kind of seeing an interview with an artist that I was like a big fan of. I mean, Mac Miller. You know, yeah. And I remember I was like searching on Spotify looking for like just interviews with Mac Miller because I like to listen to interviews with artists and people that I enjoy, you know, the work of. And I found that there were only like a couple interviews that were on Spotify, and it's Spotify, you know, YouTube has plenty of stuff. But I was a little bit kind of upset with you know, I was listening to it and it was like I think it was just like a couple like radio shows maybe, and one of them it was like the questions were they were very like, you know, topical, like about like, oh, it's like, well, what do you think of Macklemore? And like, you know, and then kind of like outing him about, you know, some things that he's not necessarily proud of and things like that. And it's like, you know, that's like kind of, but it was kind of a thing. Yeah.
No, totally. I actually met Mac Miller really briefly before he died. He's a cool guy, man. He's a very amazing musician, and he's like one of those cult figures, isn't he?
Yeah.
No, it's interesting, isn't it? Like most of the time, whenever I do interviews and stuff, like, hey, what's your favorite type of pizza or something? That's random stuff like that.
Yeah, and it was
what color do you like or something?
Yeah.
And it's like, God.
Let me cross out these next ones.
No, I don't like questions like that.
No, I got none like that.
But then I sort of, I have this funny thing where if someone asks me a question like that, I kind of freeze because I just don't know what to say because I don't really think about these things. But then if you ask me kind of like a philosophical or artsy question, I'll just ramble and
Yeah.
ramble and ramble.
Yeah.
And I've been told I have pretty dulcet tones, like it's pretty like steady. It's kind of, for a singer, quite monotone. Do you know what I mean? It's quite
Keep that voice intact.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe I'm preserving myself for the singing, but it's not consciously, but
yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know, man. I think anyone who does an interview with a musician is a brave person. I think. It's being an actor or something, you know. They're so upbeat and so kind of like actors. I think they have like a light behind their eyes that's just different.
They have to.
If you could have the opposite of that, darkness, man, then that's what musicians have.
Just stoic, everyone. But yeah, the thing with that was, you know, I was listening to that interview and I was thinking about, you know, this is after Mac Miller's death, and I was thinking about, like, it's like, man, you know, these are the conversations that you're having, and it's like, this person isn't even around to have these conversations anymore. Oh, wow, and so I thought that was a kind of a moment of kind of reflecting on that and being like,
the historical value of being a journalist.
Yeah.
It's really like, it becomes history, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like in the end, like at the time it feels like, I don't know, like media fodder or something, but in the end it will really matter. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's really important. So yeah, we work with an actor who kind of plays this kind of odd like entities, a kind of poltergeist who watches over our band, the Stingrays, this other group. He's this like Italian guy who's been in London for like since the 70s, and he's like in his 70s as well, and he interviewed Nirvana when they came to London. Wow, and he did the one interview where Kurt Cobain admitted that he was influenced by the Beatles. Yeah. And he was like, at the time, he was like, it felt really great. I only got like 5 minutes with him or something. But like, you know, that's one of the most clipped kind of moments, or one of the historical moments. Cause I think Kurt Cobain, to be honest, I'm not fully versed on this, but I think he denied that he liked the Beatles or was whatever. There's just this one clip where he admitted that he actually really did like them. And, I think, or specifically John Lennon or something. Yeah. And and it's like kind of, like I said, it's like journalism like can quickly turn into like history. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and that's really interesting. I think, and for someone like yourself, I think it's good to take. I think everyone should take a bit more pride in what they do. Maybe, you know, like that's a good answer to what you're saying about what interviews and stuff. Like you said, when you go, hey, what's your favorite pizza or something? It's like, so there's quite little pride in that. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know. I mean, would I want to hear like what Picasso's favorite pizza was? Maybe, I don't know. If I was, I'd have to be pretty bored. It'd have to be like, like a Sunday or something. I'm kind of like hungover or something. I'd be like, you like pepperoni? Like, cool. I don't know. Maybe I'm trying to find a scenario where I'd find that actually interesting. But maybe if you like deep dish or something, you'd be like, that's kind of weird. Do you know what I mean?
You just got to start intercepting and then turn it into a deep question. You got to be like, what's your favorite pizza topping? It's like, well, you know, pizza's a lot like life, and then you get really deep into it.
That's something that I'm in risk of doing.
That would be if you were obsessed with an interview, that'd be like a great way to do it. It's just like they ask you like a dry question, and then you just take up the rest of the time just answering that nonsense question.
It's a rant about like stoicism.
Yeah. But that documentation thing is a really big thing I've been thinking about personally a lot recently, because that's part of the reason that I even wanted to make a point of asking about like video and things like that. We have like a video of when Mac DeMarco came in here, and there was the interview afterwards, and I thought some of the conversation there was really interesting, and I think it's sometimes more accessible and more, you know, like
100%. Yeah, it's like the kind of, you know, poetry written in reflection kind of thing. Like it takes time for the relevance to like set in. Like I'm sure when he came in, it was probably like people like, is this wacky new guy? Who the hell is this guy? He's a wacky, crazy guy. And then like now, like he headlines like festivals, and you know he's like like a big act nowadays. Do you know what I mean? Like him, Thundercat, and Tame Impala. Like they've all gone from being cult niche things to being like headliners. And it's like, you know, I'm sure at the time people were like, who's this wacky Canadian guy who's like chain smoking, and then now he's like a really, really big deal. Do you know what I mean? And it's kind of like, like I said, it's kind of the beauty of the whole music journalist thing, isn't it? Because you're laying the foundations for like reflection, which is pretty cool. In a way, I really like love journalism and like politics, like as a pastime, just like to watch and like digest like all that stuff. It's kind of spend most of my time just watching like the news and things like that. I don't know why, but I just do.
Yeah.
And you know, in another life, I kind of would have liked to have been a journalist. Do you know what I mean? I don't think in this one that makes any sense at all. But yeah, like I find it to be a really interesting thing. It's and in a way, it's really not that different from music. I mean, maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but there's something about the curiosity. I think is similar because I think it's like you have to like care, otherwise like what's the point in doing it? Do you know what I mean? Which is just like that's like music. Do you know what I mean? Like you have to have this kind of like really random like kind of drive that you don't know where it comes from or why you're doing it. Do you know what I mean? So with music is like after like 4 or 5 years of doing it, I was like 21 or something. I was like sat there. I was just like, what do I do? Like I was like, I make sounds. People come, they listen to them, and then they go home. I was like, what is this? What is this thing we're doing? You know, why do people even like music? But I don't have any time to question what I was doing. And then you know, obviously I figured out like it's a really valuable thing, and like I kind of, you know, came back to like sense making. I was probably just a bit stoned or something, but I was like, you know, it's like kind of made sense of it again. I was like, but yeah, it's like, you know, I think the same thing with Joe's like, is it a kind of job or kind of passion where you could just like ask yourself every now and then, like, well, why am I even doing this? Which I think is a cool, which I think means it's quite an interesting thing you're doing. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. 'Cause I think if you sort of, the answer to that question is really obvious, then I think like, you know, maybe you're not, I don't know, maybe that's the beauty of like a job like journalism or music, is that you're kind of doing something that's like so random. It's like, why am I even doing this? Do you know what I mean? So, which I think is like really interesting. It's like having fun with your life. Do you know what I mean? Like, just doing something completely odd, which I think is, I like to feel odd, like to do odd things. Do you know what I mean? It's more interesting than. Like I hate to feel normal. Like it's quite obvious with this haircut. Do you know what I mean? I don't like to be treated normally. I don't want to feel normally. It's okay. I feel like don't know. It just irks me. It makes me feel strange. So it's probably what drives me to do all this stuff. You know.
Yeah, and I guess to keep light, and I guess we can wrap up. I guess very soon. I saw stepped out here. One just simple basic interview question. What's your favorite instrument to work with? What's out of what you're
at the moment
multi-instrumentalist?
At the moment, bass. I'm producing a lot of records for people recently in the last year that haven't come out yet, which I'm very excited for them all to come out. And I'm sort of writing and producing. But playing bass I absolutely love it. I think it's a great instrument, man. I think, and like I said, I've been studying it and like just sort of working on it. But I mean, yeah, like in reality, they're all wonderful toys that you can have so much fun with. I mean, yeah, they warm my heart just to think of them.
Any big bass inspirations right now?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think Raphael Sadiq is just the way it's really kind of minimalist and simple, but it just sort of pops and it's got like a funk to it, and it's really, and the way that it sits within the drum groove, I think it's just really, it just kind of jolts from place to place, which I think is really, really nice. But they're probably Raphael Sadiq. But yeah, I absolutely love the bass. I think it's just such a like infectious instrument, you know. And I kind of as a, you know, originally a singer who plays all the instruments or whatever. Like bass feels a bit like singing. Do you know what I mean? It can kind of really transform a piece of music. You know, like if you're sitting in a certain groove and then you kind of bring the bass in, it kind of just changes everything. The same way the voice does. So I think that's why I'm kind of love it at the moment.
This was just kind of one I thought of. Any favorite musicians, artists who don't speak the same language as you? Like you wouldn't know what they're saying in a song, but
yeah, totally. Yeah. Like Tim Meyer, who's like a psych rock guy. Yeah. Kind of jazzy thing. He's from Hawaii, I believe, and this guy's crazy. He believes in like some sort of space cult. I don't know if you know this guy. He's like, it's not Scientology or anything. It's like something else. I don't know what it's called. But he literally has one tune where he does speak English, but most of the time he doesn't speak English, and he has one tune where he just goes, like he's trying to sell you the cult, like he wants you to get the cult. He's like, buy the book. This is the book. You need to buy the book, and it's like, and he names the book in its entirety, and it's like, there's no music or anything. It's just literally just him just speaking into a microphone, just trying to convince you to join his cult. And he believes about like space and rational energy or something. He has this whole theory that we come from another planet because we believe in rational things when there's nothing rational about the planet Earth or something.
Yeah.
But he's amazing. I highly suggest Tim Meyer. There's what's the song? Nobody Can Live Forever, which again actually is singing in English in that tune. There's a tune Dilemma Pontal is a tune by him, which is which is non-English speaking.
Yeah.
But I absolutely love Tim Meyer.
All right, and a speed last two questions because we're getting to the last. I mean, I guess we're already over time, but this one another just thought might be interesting to ask. If you had to cover an existing album, like if you were given all the resources and you're given all of the time, and they're like, all right, you know, remake an album that some artist has done. You know, you can work with whoever, you know, whatever amount of things. Is there anything that would stand out to you? Any albums that you connect with that would be cool to do?
Wow, that's really a good question. I mean, one song, it's not a good answer because I don't think the end
It's
result.
fine,
I don't think the end result would be any good. But like Dark Side of the Moon, like if to do that, but I don't think the result would be very good. But I think it'd just be fun to do. You know?
Yeah.
The tune Money, like my bassist always plays that bass line, and it's just like such an infectious piece of music. You just wish that you'd written that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like the tune Money.
Yeah.
Just there's so much good music on that record, but
Yeah.
I probably say that record. I don't know
Yeah.
why. It's probably not gonna. Maybe if I had a real answer, that wouldn't be good to share that anyway, because then I'd like be spoiling something.
Maybe. Yeah.
But no, I think I probably Dark Side of the Moon.
Maybe you could rephrase it or reframe it as like an album you'd like to be in the room with when it was being made or
Sure.
something.
Oh,
I feel like
yeah.
Dark Side of the Moon would be a crazy one to see.
Absolutely. Yeah, just sitting in the corner getting stoned, like one of their weird friends or something.
Who's that crazy?
Yeah, who's that
So-
guy? I feel like they used to
just
do
the
that
same
back
thing.
in the day, didn't
Yeah.
they? Just have like just random cats.
Just some guy.
Yeah, just sitting in the corner. I feel like people don't really do that as much anymore.
And this could be the last, I guess, written question, and then you can just, you know, anything you wanna mention. And we could also talk about this afterwards too. Since it's kind of free format, we can play whatever. Any music that you'd want to see played on the air, or anything that you think would just be cool to be broadcasting.
Well, you know, I always, whenever I get this opportunity, I always want to play like Ray Charles or something, because it's just something that just never really gets played on a radio, and I think it's such beautiful music. And I think like I did a BBC Radio 1 interview. I got him played on that, and it was like they were like, that's the first time he's been played on here for like 60 years.
That's
or something.
crazy. He's so big.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's
but
wild.
now they just play, you know, just like pop music, you know.
Yeah.
But I'd love to play. Yeah, Ray Charles probably. That's a Fool for You, but Ray Charles probably.
And any you could say multiple if you wanted to. And it could be any musicians, maybe even people you have, any you know, friends, anything like that, or just anything else you think is interesting.
Yeah, I put you on to Lex French, my guitarist, because I produce his music, so I play bass on it and produce his music, help him write it and stuff like that. It's Lex French, written and spelt Francais, but Lex French, and he's got a couple tunes on Spotify which I think are really good. I think people should check them out. I think if you like what I do, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. It's maybe just a bit more like Jamiroquai kind of vibe.
Oh yeah,
it's a bit more funky, a bit more colourful. So yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah. And I guess that's it for written questions. I mean, there's other stuff, but I think it got to some of the cooler ones probably out of those. But yeah, any last things you want to say? Shout out, you know,
well, we're
playing
Philadelphia tonight. Underground Arts Club. Arts Club, is that right? I think that's
Underground
right.
Arts.
We got there. Yeah. Yeah, we're playing their new album, Hotel Heaven. Yellow Days. My name's George. As I live and breathe. This is I forgot the name of the radio station. WKDU.
It's fortunately written on the back wall here. 91.7 FM.
No, so yeah, to come through, come hang out, listen to the new record, and I'm still kicking, still alive. So God bless.
Yeah, I'll be there. I'll see you there.
Yeah, beautiful.
But yeah. Thank you for coming out. Thank you so much for coming out.
Pleasure.
And thanks everybody for listening to this broadcast. I think we might be going back to Leah's show right after this. But yeah, you can check out my show too. I've played Yellow Days in the past. I'll be playing more Yellow Days, and I'll probably be playing some of the music that we spoke about today. So yeah, thank you again so much for coming out. I'm gonna figure out how to do the transition over here, but yeah, I really appreciate it. It's huge, really great meeting you.
Oh man, thank you very much.
Yeah, but yeah, I can check in with some people about the getting things transferred over. All good.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Really.